Well, hello, all of my crafty friends. I am here today with a very special card. Today is my husband's B-Day. Happy birthday, Mr. Baker. So I decided to bring out the Honeybee Stamps Card Show stamp set to create a fun card today to help celebrate his birthday. So I loved these stamps when I saw them. They were awesome and vintagey. And he says that today is the day that he officially becomes an old man. So I thought that it was very fitting to use this stamp set. I'm going to use two of the cards from this stamp set on the card for today. And it's the two cards that are facing the one direction that I was wanting my card to go in. So I'm going into Design Space, and you can see that I've already kind of created a card base here, and I've had a couple people ask about heat embossing after writing with your Cricut. So I wanted to show this for you guys to see. So I'm coming in and I am writing just a simple sentiment that says zooming through the years. I had that written. It always comes up as Cricut Sans. I go over to filter and I click on my writing font, and then I want to use a particular writing font that is this cinnamon writing font. I'm going to end up sizing that down to 0.4 of an inch high, simply because the opening that I have cut out in this card is a 1/2 inch. So I need for it to be just a little bit smaller so it can be seen through the window. Once I get that sized the way that I want it to be sized, then I can attach it to that back panel. So it's not going to be attached to this gray panel that you're seeing here. I'm going to actually be attaching it to the white panel that is behind it. So once I get that all attached, I am going to go to make it, and I'm going to make sure that I have everything looking the way that I want it to look on my mats. And then I'm going to take you guys over to my Cricut. When I am using my 100-pound cardstock, just because I'm a little bit lazy, I usually just hit the craft board setting, and that cuts through very well. So let's go over to my Cricut, and I am going to show you guys, this is the gel tip pen from Cricut. I'm going to put that into my machine, and we are going to load it, and I am going to show you guys the Cricut actually writing the sentiment out for me, and then we are going to heat emboss it. So what I typically do is I always put my Cricut on fast mode whenever I'm writing a sentiment that I am going to be heat embossing, simply because I don't know whether it stays wet quite as long as the Versamark ink does. It stays wet a pretty good length of time, because I've been able to smear quite a few sentiments by using these gel pens. But I just don't like to wait, especially if my sentiment is a little bit longer. So I typically put it on the fast mode and let it write through my sentiment so that I can make sure that all the parts are still very good and wet, so that we can take it over and we can heat emboss that. So it is just cutting out this panel for me, and once this panel is cut out, we are then going to go over and we are going to use some Judi and Kins Iridescent embossing powder to heat set this. So I have my coffee filter here, and I'm going to go ahead and pour that over. Now I did make the mistake of not treating my paper with an anti-static powder tool prior to, so I did get a good bit of glitter all over my panel. It wasn't a big deal, because realistically this is the only part of this cardstock that will be seen in the final card, so I wasn't terribly worried about it. But I just wanted to let you know that it's still a really good idea to treat your paper with the anti-static powder tool before you use your Cricut to write with the gel pens. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm allowing my heat gun to heat heat up off to the side, and I did bring in one of my paint brushes just to kind of try to get some of that glitter from around it, but it was pretty pointless. It was stuck pretty well all around my sentiment. So I'm going to bring you guys to my other camera, and I'm going to bring in my heat tool, and you guys can see it melting. I love this magic. I never get tired of it. And so it is smooth and melted. We have a nice glittery, shimmery background created with our Cricut pen and our Judi and Kins embossing powder. That is the Iridescent Sparkle embossing powder from Judi and Kins, and it works very well using your Cricut. So I just wanted to do that little thing for you guys because I know that I had heard a couple of people talking about it, asking about it, and wanting to see it. So I hope that that answers your questions. If you guys have any other questions about the heat embossing with the Cricut gel pens, please let me know. I will try to help in any way that I can. So now that we have that part done, I am going to go in and I'm going to bring in my small Misty and some of my Gina K amalgam ink, and I'm going to bring both of those cards out that I was looking at before, and I'm going to stamp those out. Now, I did stamp these a couple of times because there were some areas that were meant to be black, and this is my very first time using this awesome stamp set, but I'm sure that it will not be my last. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that out with some Gina K amalgam ink, and I am stamping this on what I thought was some Bristol Smooth cardstock, and you will see about that in just a few moments. So we're going to stamp that out just a couple of times, and then I'm going to bring you guys to a different view of the camera so you guys can see us beginning to color in just a bit. So once we have that stamped out, I am going to bring in some of my Karin Brush Pro markers. Now I have the 60 set as well as the 12 set of the metallics, and that is what I chose to use today. I was looking for, you know, a medium a little bit different. I hadn't used these in a while. I wanted some sparkle, and I know that when I'm doing mail cards, I don't get so much sparkle, so I figured I could bring in my Spectrum Noir pen, bling out my car, and then everything would be great. And then I'm going to use a couple of these metallics. So I have chosen to use indigo and sapphire for my colors. Now I want you to pay attention to this. I am going to put in just a little bit of color of each color, and then I'm going to bring in my Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. And this is how I knew that I had the wrong paper. Somehow another piece of cardstock got into my Bristol paper pad, and it's because it was not blending. Now look at the difference when I transition to my Bristol Smooth paper. This is how your watercolor pens should work when you are using your Bristol Smooth paper. Okay, so now we're just going to go through and I'm going to color up my card. You see how well it blended, the difference between the two. And I am going to go in and I'm going to color one of these cards on screen, and I'm going to color the other one off screen, just putting down a little bit of color, pulling the color out with the Spectrum Noir sparkle pen because it works great with these watercolor pens and it provides a ton of sparkle. So guys, as I said, today is my hubby's birthday. Happy birthday, Dwayne. Thank you so much for being such a huge part of my life. We've been together well over half of our lives, and I could not imagine another person that I would want to spend that much time with, and I'm looking forward to so much more time with you. You are amazing. You are so much strength in our home. You are a great role model for our kids. You treat me and our daughter like a princess. I just cannot say enough about how amazing you are, how grateful I am to have found such an awesome person at such a young age, and to continue to love you more and more. Like, we've been together for 20 years, and I feel like I love you more now than I did when we first met. I hope that your birthday is amazing. I hope the kids and I make your day. I wish that you were off today, but I hope that the evening is amazing. We love you. Thank you for being my biggest supporter and the best cheerleader that any girl could ask for. You guys, please drop a comment below wishing Mr. Baker the happiest 37th birthday. He is an amazing guy. Like, I know you guys hear me talking about him a lot, but I promise you guys, I know without a shadow of a doubt that I got a gem when I got my husband. He is so goal oriented. He is my biggest cheerleader. He wants to see me happy. He wants to see me succeed. He wants to see me go to the moon and far past that. Like, when I have a dream or a goal, he wants to figure out what he needs to do to make that happen. With YouTube, when I decided I wanted to do YouTube, he wanted to know what he needed to do to make me successful with doing that. He wants me in my profession, being a therapist, what does he need to do to support me with that? And a lot of times when you are married and in the military, the wives put their lives on hold, and he makes sure that I can reach for my goals as well. All right, let me stop because I'll go on and on. So, you guys, I've colored up the cars. I went to my scan and cut. I cut them out. And now we are going to put this card together. So you see that piece that I cut out with the Cricut. Those are those pieces. I also cut out 2 pieces to mat that on. This is the Cricut True Brush vinyl that we're going to be using for that. And I brought out another piece of cardstock for me to do the inside portion. And then I did a top fold card base. As you guys know, I love doing my cards in 5x7. So that is what this card will be. So as you guys can see, I'm just kind of going in and looking to see how I want the card to move on the top panel, how much space I'm going to need, and then deciding that how long I will need for a pull tab to be. So I did create a pull tab off screen that is a 1/2 inch long with a pull sentiment written at the bottom with the Cricut, just to finish off that lever that I need for this card. So the next thing that I'm doing is I'm going to get ready to glue that onto the sentiment piece that is going to be the moving portion to this card. So once I get that lined up the way that I want it to be lined up, I'm going to go ahead and start gluing that down. And I did create a second piece to glue down with that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out this Firework stencil from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm going to use that in order to create a some interest on the front panel of my card. I'm bringing in some different Distress Oxide inks. I'm going to be using Salty Ocean. I am going to be using some Weathered Wood. I also am going to bring in Hickory Smoke, but I don't end up using that color. And then I'm going to bring in Pumice Stone. So once I get all of those colors in, I'm going to also bring in this Pink and Main Ergonomic brush. Now, I've used this once, and I wasn't quite sure about it, so I wanted to give it another go. I've actually bought 2 of the Pretty Pink Posh ones and 3 of the ones from Amazon, just to kind of see how I like them and them in comparison, because I do have some hand issues. I'm just going over the front of that panel with a little bit of the pumice stone to kind of tone it down a little bit. And I'm going to start at the bottom of my stencil, at the bottom of my card base with the pumice stone. I'm going to move up to the Weathered Wood, and then lastly I am going to bring in that Salty Ocean color. So we're kind of going from a gray to a blue gradient, just because I was thinking about, like, kind of when you are driving really fast, that smoke that you see that starts to cloud up, that goes up to the sky. So that was kind of the idea that I had in my head, going into it. And so I then stenciled all of that through, and once I get done stenciling all of that through, I'm going to come back in with some of those different colors just to kind of again soften the starkness of the stencil and the background, just because I want it to look a little more guy-like, rustic, I guess, is the look that I was going for. So now we're going to get that cleaned off. I am going to bring back in our moving piece, and I'm going to start creating a well for it by backing everything around it with some foam tape. Once I get all of that backed, then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to stencil down my my pull tab, because I forgot to do that initially, but I was able to get that lined up pretty well, as you can see here. So once we get that done, I'm going to flip that stencil over, taking all of that foam tape off, and then I'm going to place the foam tape side up. I'm going to put the pull tab down, and then I'm going to put my card panel on top of that, trying to line it up as evenly as I can, trying to utilize those grid mats, and it worked out pretty well. So now we can see how our moving piece is going to work. So now what I want to have is kind of it looking like the car is driving down the road. That's my whole idea. So I'm going to bring in another piece of foam tape, and that piece of foam tape is going to go underneath that back wheel, and it's just going to be on the back wheel. That's literally going to be the only thing holding this car onto the card, because it will act as a stopper. And I can't put glue anywhere else, because then that would stop the car from moving freely on the front of the panel. So I'm going to make sure that that is taped down really well. I'm going to kind of look at where it is, and then I'm going to move it again before I finally push it down really well. Now, one of the things that I did not do is I did not account for the where the car would end. And so when I wrote out my sentiment initially, the year part got covered, so I had to write it again in my best handwriting to try to match the sentiment on the inside, so that when you pull the tab, it says zooming through the years. So I also cut out the word celebrate with my Cricut. I created a shadow with that True Brush vinyl. I bought out some of the Art Deco vinyl to do the top of the sentiment, and then I cut out the word celebrate 3 more times with some heavyweight cardstock. So once I get all of the heavyweight cardstock glued together, I am going to then put the vinyl piece of celebrate down on top of it. And what I usually do is just take off half of it at a time and get it all lined up. And I absolutely love the way that that looks. I really love how using vinyl for my sentiments really it finishes it for me. Now, I will say, hindsight, I think I probably would have used a different color for the shadow, but I think all in all, it's pretty good. I just felt like it was a little too much silver when I was done. But let me know what you guys think. So now that I have that part done, I went ahead and glued it down to the mat, which was another piece of that True Brush vinyl. I then went back to my Cricut and had my Cricut write part of the inside sentiment for me, again using that gel pen, and I am going to heat emboss that, and I'm going to finish it off with a sentiment from another honeybee stamp set. So after I get done after I get done heat embossing that with my Wagner heat tool, I'm going to bring my Misty back in, and I'm going to bring this little Celebrate stamp set from Honeybee Stamps, and I want that big birthday that is inside, and I want it to say, and I couldn't be happier to be cruising along on your 37th birthday. And then my car is on the inside. So blue is his favorite color. He's a blue and gray type of guy, and you know that I am purple. So I colored my car purple so that I could be cruising along with him on the inside of his card. Again, I used that Judi and Kins Iridescent embossing powder on the inside to heat emboss the birthday as well. And I glued down the other card flat on the card base. I'm going to mat that to another piece of that silver True Brush vinyl. The card base was warped, so I had to press down a good bit to get that flattened, and then I'm going to add that to our actual card base. Once I get done with that, I can add the front onto our card, and we are almost done with this one. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in two of the Nuvo vintage drops. One is the chalkboard color and the other one is worn navy, and I'm just going to add just a couple of dots just because I always feel like a card needs to end with some type of embellishments, and I just couldn't put any jewels on it because this is for a guy, right? Like, I think I was pushing it with the vinyl that I used, but I had to add something. So guys, that is my card for today. Happy birthday again, Dwayne. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave me a comment below. You guys know I love interacting with you, and I will look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, chatting with you in the comments. And if you like this, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I'll see you again in the next video.